So multi-domain battlefield. This is one you've heard me come up before. And go figure, whether it be astrophysics, chemistry, calculus, any of those things, those will be the standards. Because if you're not using calculus, if you're not using chemistry, if you're not using the literature in the town paper, you will have war. You will. It's going to be somebody's power trip over what it does. So let me begin by saying, well, the only difference between, and not the calculus bullshit inside here, there's a very strong trick question before I start to tell this asshole right here, hang with me until the end of the statement, because I want Americans' industrial monster to make this through before any other countries. No offense, it's a horse race. Putin in China, Lithuania, wherever. We've been tasked by the commander of PACOM. I want to be able to have control of that index and be able to graph that from our models, but that's where trust comes into this, that you're fully documenting iRobot stuff inside here, because otherwise this general's talking about every battlefield in general. Ever, at any point in time, that was a multi-domain battlefield. On the battle, tanks, ground movements, air operations are a version of one of those sectors. Figure out what that sector is. Obviously, those would be what that is. Human, every single MOS inside of there is where this individual number has to start. We have to have a value for that number, otherwise the universe falls apart. Well, Admiral Harris, at that level, you have a tax of every state, every country, the global models of what these systems are, and from that number you begin to break that down. Well, who's got what and what? And larger numbers don't necessarily mean you won. I mean, when we do small control groups, what would be the result? Is anybody getting tested inside here to say retention is up? This is a multi-battlefield here. Okay, there's retention, there's critical thinking about this, the augments of your guys' specific MOSs, of what details you have, and these guys got to cover that from an exposition. That's what that is. They don't have to, but it's going to be that way individually because there are only so many of these, more of these, a whole bunch more of these, seeing that why the hell would this be in here for multi-domain battlefields or what it is. You guys get to read this. Why this isn't full of these inside of this room absolutely drives me crazy. What are you teaching? How is this useful to the Army or Navy or Marines or Air Force? Now, I'll give you we have problems with our networks what's going on. Just in one snapshot, what do I see is going on in here? I see multiple indexes of different systems. Does it matter given the country? Does it matter given the time frame? If you're not efficient about the choices you allow to come in here instead of some damn open door policy, then I'm just paying this asshole to give a presentation that doesn't mean anything in terms of tread doc that turns into what this guy is supposed to do or why he's supposed to do it. None. None. And what's the purpose on that? That I have to trust this guy to be able to augment that system in here? These guys have to know at least to some level what degree these guys are going to come in here. From a reporter, so the reporter's going to report on tread doc later, right? About what tread doc is. Well, don't you have reporting standards? Those standards would be the documentation that you use to train somebody on to adjust their calc to whether they are going to be the most efficient person to the job or not. Doesn't matter if you're in China, doesn't matter if you're in Russia, doesn't matter if you're in the United States. It's going to be this. Now, we want our American industrial model, AR-15, to come across, King George and the Constitution, right? We want a situation under that model to train people to say, hey, is that emulating what is going on today? Because those situations aren't correct. They're not calculus. They're not the proper trajectory to cutting off a piece for 10%, right? 2 pounds of wheat, 2 pounds of barley. Whether the war frame is going to say the trajectory of going to war at this time is more beneficial than not going to war. That the operation is more beneficial to use ground units instead of a tank. It's more beneficial to use soft operators instead of 11 Bravo. It's more beneficial to use somebody with terminal designs in Q-25 than it is to bring in an F-22. That's a multi-domain. Each one of them have a cost. How many of you actually know anything about the Air Force by its standard? That is why you must be careful about this. This is a sneaky, nasty monster. Now, I can't necessarily determine this to be correct, but we know it's true. And if they argue with me and they don't understand that calc, then they are liars. They should know it to be the truth behind the answer, and then the calculus that they present determines the case. The laws of FMA, of those objects as you present them to do a thing. How many of those things did we get? We talked a lot about historical models inside of here. We could say Iwo Jima, we could say Guantanamo, or at any rate, Omaha Beach, whatever the case may be. That's a multi-domain battlefield. I want you guys to study that tonight. I want you to go back in a historical record and try to figure out how many sectors were actually in there. Then go through those sectors, nut and bolt, to figure out what the costs were, how many people were involved in there, what were potentially the trajectories on those things. If any of those things are symbolic to what's happening today on the floor by congruency. Bernoulli, change out the numbers on the date, and then you have potentially the identical same battlefield. And obviously, the costs might be adjusted in some form inside here, but nevertheless,
you guys coming today. I apologize, we're out of time.
General relativity is a map that determines what it is before you just go out there and look at it. Now, if you don't have the science to go out there and look at those things, or the optics, the recon team, the division, or other things, it's going to fall apart.
I've been playing for weeks now, and I've made hardly any progress in this game.